Picture this. You're sitting on your bed late at night, phone glowing in your hand. You just checked your bank app. Again, rent is due soon. Groceries are already trimmed down to bare minimum, and then you remember it. That monthly student loan payment quietly waiting in the background, like a bill that never ages out. You did everything right. You went to school. You studied. You graduated. This was supposed to be the part where life gets easier, but instead, every month feels tighter than the last. And what messes with your head the most is this quiet thought you don't like admitting out loud. How am I more educated and still struggling? Here's the uncomfortable paradox. For millions of people, going to college didn't move them forward financially. It actually pushed them backward. And that's not because they were lazy, irresponsible, or made bad choices. It's because they walked straight into something most people don't realize exists until it's already locked behind them. The student loan trap. Most people think student loans are simple. You borrow money, you get a degree, you earn more, you pay it back. Clean, logical, fair. But that story skips the most important part. The part where psychology, incentives, and timing quietly turn that investment into a financial drag that can last decades. If you're struggling with student loans, the system trained you to internalize it as a personal failure. You didn't pick the right major. You didn't hustle enough. You didn't land the right job fast enough. But zoom out for a second. Why do so many people from completely different backgrounds, schools, and careers end up feeling the same pressure, the same anxiety, the same sense of falling behind? That's not coincidence. That's design. This system wasn't built to optimize your financial freedom. It was built to shift risk away from institutions and place it squarely on young people who didn't yet understand the long-term cost of debt. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or even a little angry about it, that reaction makes sense. You're not broken. You were handed a rigged starting line. Let's talk about how the trap actually works. It starts early, before your brain is fully developed, before you've earned a real paycheck, before you understand compound interest in real terms. At 18, you're asked to sign loan documents that would make a bank hesitate if you were 35. No collateral, no income, no negotiation, just a signature and a promise. Psychologically, this matters because when the cost of something is abstract and delayed, our brains drastically underestimate it. A $40,000 loan doesn't feel real when repayment lives in a hazy future. It feels like monopoly money. But once repayment begins, it becomes painfully real. According to the U.S. Federal Reserve, the average student loan borrower graduates with about $37,000 in debt at a typical interest rate between 5 and 7%. That loan doesn't just sit there, it grows. Over a standard 10-year repayment plan, that $37,000 often turns into over $50,000 paid back. That's not education costing more. That's time charging rent. Now layer this on top of real life. You're not starting repayment when you're financially stable. You're starting when you're entry level, when rent takes 30 to 40% of your income, when food, transport, and basic life costs are at their most expensive relative to your pay. This is where the trap tightens. Student loans don't just take money, they take options. A 2022 study from the Federal Reserve found that borrowers with student loan debt were significantly less likely to buy a home by age 30 compared to their debt-free peers. Not because they didn't want to, but because debt-to-income ratios quietly disqualified them. Debt also changes behavior. When a fixed payment looms every month, people become risk-averse. They stay in jobs they dislike because stability matters more than growth. They delay career switches. They avoid entrepreneurship. They postpone family decisions. And here's the cruel irony. The promise of college was upward mobility. But the structure of student loans often locks people into financial conservatism right when their earning potential should be flexible and exploratory. Meanwhile, tuition kept rising. Between 2000 and 2023, average college tuition in the U.S. increased by over 180%. While median wages rose less than 70%. That gap didn't disappear. It was bridged with debt. So when people say, college made me poorer, what they're really saying is this: my income increased, but my financial freedom decreased. And that distinction matters. Here's the shift that changes everything. Student loans aren't just a financial issue. They're a psychological tax on your future self. Once you see them that way, the goal stops being pay them off as fast as possible at all costs. That mindset just replaces one form of pressure with another. The real goal becomes control. Control over cash flow, control over decisions, control over how much of your future is already spoken for. Because money, at its core, isn't about luxury. It's about breathing room. And when debt steals that breathing room, even a good salary can feel suffocating. Understanding this reframes the problem. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, how do I reduce the system's leverage over my life? That's where real progress begins. Let's talk about what actually works. Not theory, not hustle slogans. Real, doable moves. The first shift is about reclaiming cash flow, not attacking the balance emotionally. If you have student loans, the minimum payment is the system's default, but defaults are rarely optimized for your life. Many repayment plans quietly assume a level of financial stability most early career people don't have. Income-driven repayment plans exist for a reason. They're not a failure. They're a pressure valve. If your payment drops from $400 to $180 by switching plans, that extra $220 isn't wasted. It's oxygen. It's money you can redirect toward an emergency fund, high-interest debt, or simply reducing daily stress. Psychologically, this matters more than shaving a few months off the loan timeline. When people feel less squeezed, they make better decisions across the board. The expected outcome here isn't instant freedom. It's reduced panic. And reduced panic leads to consistency. The second tactic is treating high-interest debt like an investment opportunity, not a moral obligation. If part of your student loan balance carries interest above 7%, paying that down aggressively isn't just responsible, it's mathematically powerful. Think of it this way. Paying off a loan at 8% is the equivalent of earning a guaranteed 8% return. No volatility, no market risk, no waiting. If you put an extra $200 a month toward a $15,000 balance at 8%, you can save over $6,000 in interest and cut years off repayment. That's not discipline. That's leverage. And leverage works both ways. You might as well use it. The third shift is separating lifestyle upgrades from identity upgrades. One of the quietest traps student debt creates is the pressure to look successful before you actually feel secure. Better apartment, better car, better everything. But every fixed upgrade locks in future obligations. If your rent increases by $300 a month, that's $3,600 a year that could have gone toward freedom. Over 5 years, that's $18,000 in lost flexibility. Choosing a slightly smaller place or keeping a paid-off car longer isn't regression. It's strategic delay. People who escape debt fastest aren't the most frugal. They're the most intentional. They ask one simple question before upgrading: does this buy me peace or does it buy me pressure? The fourth tactic is rebuilding optionality before chasing optimization. A small emergency fund changes everything, even $1,000. Without it, every unexpected expense goes on a credit card, stacking interest on top of interest. With it, you interrupt the cycle. Once that buffer exists, the system loses a bit of its grip. You stop borrowing to survive. You start choosing. Over time, optionality compounds, not just financially, but emotionally. You negotiate better. You leave bad jobs sooner. You take smarter risks. That's how people actually break free, not by grinding harder, but by reducing how much the system gets to decide for them. If college made you poorer, that doesn't mean education was worthless. It means the financing model was broken. You weren't wrong to want a better future. You weren't naive for trusting the promise. You weren't careless for believing effort would be rewarded. The rules changed quietly, and no one updated the instructions. But here's the good part. Once you understand the trap, it stops being invisible, and what's visible can be navigated. This isn't about perfection. It's about reclaiming agency, one decision at a time, one pressure point released, one layer of understanding added. You're not behind. You're early in awareness. And awareness, honestly, is the most powerful asset you can have. If this helped you see your situation a little more clearly, consider sharing it with someone who feels the same quiet weight. Sometimes, clarity is the first real relief. This is Nex Invests, and we're figuring this out together.